Hello, everybody. We are live. It is Wednesday. It is 11 a.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. in the UK, and whatever it is, wherever you are. People are coming in from all over the world to view today's show, and it is one of the most important and inspiring shows that I think I've ever had the honor of presenting, because our topic today is mobility and disability, which I think is not really a subject that we've spoken enough about as an industry. And it is hugely important because for most of us, when we say mobility, we think of nice overseas trips, of travel. But for many people, when we talk about mobility, it has got a very different meaning. And our very special guest today is the wonderful Sue Kukadia, who's going to be telling us about the challenges that she has faced in her life with Spina Bifida, how that has affected her mobility in every sense of the word, but also how she has become, first of all, so successful in her chosen career as head of immigration at Mazars, but secondly, as an advocate for diversity and for disability. So it really is going to be a very, very exciting and inspiring conversation that we have. So wherever you are in the world, please, I can see lots of you doing it already, join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us, who you are. Where I see Sandra Clare has come in from Alexandria, a really great topic today. People are coming in from all over the world, which is great because we've got so much to talk about, and it's a really, really important subject. Next week, by the way, we're continuing with the, if you like, diversity theme, and we're going to be talking about mobility and diversity. And I'm delighted to say our guest next week is going to be the incredible Susie Chapman from FM Global, and she's going to be talking about her very diverse and blended family, and also the activism that she thinks we should all be doing to really get diversity up on our agenda. So we've got a huge amount of stuff to talk about, and I'm going to be getting into that as soon as we can. I also want to remind everybody, of course, that if you want your CPE credits, we offer CPE credits. If you want them from Worldwide ERC, then your credit is there for your GMS or your CRP. If you want them from HRCI or SHRM, then again, the credits are there. And many thanks to our good friends at Rocket Mortgage who got those codes for us. If you want to see it, the code, I'll leave it up there just for another minute or so. But please either jot down the number you need or take a photo or screenshot it or do something, because your codes are there. We'll just leave them up for the moment. Every week, one of the things we try and do is to share with you the breaking news in our industry. So what's been happening in our wonderful industry over the last 7 days? Let's have a look. Let's see exactly what has happened in our wonderful world of global mobility over the last 7 days. Congratulations to everybody who has moved job, everyone who's been promoted, everyone who, all your other achievements. And indeed, there's loads of jobs out there. So if you are looking, there's loads of jobs, and we wish you all the best in terms of your in terms of your job hunt. We're going to move straight on because we've got so much to talk about today. We're going to move straight on to talk about immigration. And as ever, I'm absolutely delighted we've got with us Julia Onslow-Cole. But please, everybody, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's welcome to our stage the wonderful Julia Onslow-Cole. Hey, Julia,
hi, Brian.
See you, and I see you're back home, which is very pleasant for you.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah,
back home, and really, really excited about the show and hearing from Sue, who's just a brilliant immigration expert.
Sue is a brilliant immigration expert and just a legend of mobility, and she is just so inspiring. So, Julia, what are you going to be talking to us about today?
So just going to give you a little update from Asia Pacific, and one of my colleagues, Becky, she's doing a big seminar in Shanghai today, and I talked to her this morning, and we wanted to just bring everyone's attention to the APEC Business Travel Card, because I don't think many people really know about it, but it's a travel card that you can get which actually allows you to do short-term business visits without visas. So it's an incredibly good card, but not a lot of people know about it. Not a lot of people apply. So basically, it is valid for 5 years once you get it. And once you get it, it eliminates the need for visas for short-term business travel. And in addition, participating airlines also can push you through on a fast track. So that's a real bonus as well. So there's full members, and the full members include China, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore. And if you're a full member, then you apply in your own country, and it can take a while, because what the government has to do is they have to contact all of the countries in this group and make sure that they're happy for you to get this expedited process and visa-free travel effectively for business trips. So it can be very quick. So it could be 6 weeks, but mainly it's much longer, and it could be up to 6 months. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to highlight it, because not many people really know about it, and it's a personal application, is that breaking news was that there's been absolutely no official announcement in China. But what we're now seeing over the last couple of weeks are people in industries other than manufacturing getting these visas. So it was traditionally, if you're a Chinese citizen, you applied for an APAC business travel visa. It was really, you had to be in manufacturing. But we've actually seen some with people from financial services and consultancy. So this is a really, really good development. There's no official announcement, but this is what we're seeing. So the other thing to say is that if people want to apply, it's very local specific. So if you're a Chinese citizen and you live in Shanghai, it has to be, you have to apply for Shanghai. So hi, Drew. I see Drew saying he hadn't heard of it. Well, I must say I didn't know a lot about it either. But the other thing that's really interesting.
Now everybody does, because we're sharing it. Amazing.
Yeah, because it's a really good thing, Brian. But the other thing that's even more interesting is that China, Canada and the US are transition members, which means that they're not full members. So you can't get visa-free travel, but you can get the whole thing expedited. So if you apply in the US because you're a US citizen, or Canada because you're Canadian, you can get this whole process of traveling to those countries expedited. You're not visa-free, but it's a big advantage, and for participating airlines will give you a quick buzz through on the as you travel. So that's one thing I just wanted to say. And the second thing I wanted to say was that we've really noticed increased compliance in the whole region. We've actually had a number of individuals who've had to report in various countries in Asia Pacific for not complying with very small notifications. So I just wanted to highlight this and tell you all that you really must keep a track on this. So Vietnam, and we know that Vietnam's actually ridiculously strict, there is a deadline of July the 5th this year where you have to report everyone that you have who
That's just 5 weeks away.
Yes, and there's fines if you don't. In Indonesia, there's also reporting, and it's not just on who you have as a foreign worker, but what you've done to train their Indonesian counterparts. In the Philippines, there's reporting, and individuals actually have to go themselves to report unless they've got a representative. In China, these small, we've had a couple of people who've, it was rather concerning for them. They've actually had to report into a police officer because they haven't made a very small reporting notification, which comes up within 10 days. Same in Singapore. So I just wanted to sort of end on that note that, you know, just be really careful, make sure you really know all of the reporting requirements and really, really stick to them.
Okay, Julia, thank you so much. That's a really helpful and insightful update. Really appreciate it. So we're now going to bring on Julie Barron to talk us about some tax updates. So everybody, whilst we're preparing to bring Julie on stage, you know what to do. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button, and let's say thank you as ever to Julie Onslow-Cole and to welcome onto the stage, Julie Barron. Hey, Julie, good to see you.
How are you?
Yeah, good. Just good, and very, very excited to hear from Sue and her inspiring talk. But before we get on to that, let's be a bit more sort of techie and talk about tax. I know that
a little bit boring, yeah.
I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that at all. But anyway, there's some important things going on in tax in the US with the debt ceiling. So tell us where we are. What's news?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to bring up some, the big politics that are going on right now are the debt ceiling talks, and Congress had awarded, I guess if you will, the IRS $80 billion last year. In extra funding to kind of help them with some of the things that have been antiquated at the IRS. So their systems, their staffing, some things that they really need to work on. Well, part of these debt ceiling talks is going to take $21 billion away from that. So they're really going to lose a lot of that funding that they had gotten. And they had come up with some big plans on things that they were going to do with the money. And we were looking forward to better customer service. They actually said, Brian, believe it or not, that they think that they could phase out fax machines in 5 years. And I think the rest of us phased fax machines out 5 years ago. But so the IRS is very behind.
Where do they live? 1980?
They do. The IRS is so behind. Anyway, so they were going to use this money for all of these updates were really just to, get with the times, really. They were going to use it on some high net worth audits. Now, I think that this will still happen, but they are going to lose some of the funding because of the debt ceiling issue. A couple other updates from the IRS not related to the debt ceiling. They have resumed this week the sending out of collection notices. So in February of 2022, they had paused that because they got so far behind during COVID with actually opening their mail, that they were sending out notices to people who had responded to prior notices, and the collection notices were getting crazy and things were crossing. So they had paused that, and it has been over a year since they sent out those collection notices, but now they're going to start again. So if you've got US taxpayers, I have a feeling those letters are going to come flooding out. And so just be on the lookout for that. People are going to start to get notices. There's also, the IRS has warned us about a lot of scams going on for a COVID era credit that was out there about retaining your employees. And so there are a lot of scammers out there trying to especially target small businesses and not-for-profits, offering them some help with getting these credits when actually they aren't eligible for them. So the IRS has warned about that. And just one interesting tidbit, Brian, I said I was going to give a little ChatGPT update. ChatGPT had tried to pass the CPA exam here in the US several times, couldn't do it, but the latest version actually passed the exam. So now we have,
ChatGPT CPA.
Yeah, so ChatGPT is now a CPA. And so now AI can pass the exam, which it couldn't do before. It had failed in the previous versions, and now it can do it. So watch out, CPAs. We have a little competition.
I wonder when they're going to start taxing ChatGPT.
Oh, you're right. It's the newest thing. They're going to have to go after that.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. That's a fascinating update, and I just love the fact that that the IRS is thinking of getting rid of fax machines. I think it's
isn't that funny? They're hoping in 5 years, within 5 years. Yeah.
Oh yes, we wouldn't want to rush it now, would we?
No, exactly. Brilliant. Crazy.
Okay, so anyway, Julie, just great having you on the show. We're going to say goodbye to you now. We're just going to bring Tally on just to give us a quick update before we move on to talk to Sue Kukadia. So everybody, let's hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's say cheerio to Julie Barron. Take care. And we're going to bring onto stage our very own, our producer, the wonderful Tally.
Hi, Brian. And yeah, I'm going to be very quick because Sue is already in the green room, and we're so fortunate to have her. And you know, I don't know if people realize when they watch the show all the effort that goes from our guests. And really, Sue has been through a lot this past few months, and you talked to her about it. And still, she had time to come and have the prep meeting with us, and we're really fortunate for that. So I really want to extend my appreciation and thanks to Sue for that. Okay, so before I leave, just a reminder that our employee-initiated moves pulse survey that we had you fill up. The results are in, and you can download them. I will give the link to that in the comments. Also, talking about ChatGPT, actually, the Benevo GPT is coming soon. We talked about the difference between the chat and the inside Benevo GPT, which is not open and has information that we feed it. So definitely join the beta list because it's going to be very exciting when it's out. And same thing for the Global Mobility Staffing Survey, which I invited everyone to join. So the results are coming soon, so be prepared, and I will share the link once it's here.
Okay, thank you so much, Tally. So now we're going to get on to bringing Sue onto stage. Now, out there in our audience, please, please, please hit that heart button, hit that like button, hit that applause button like you have never, ever hit it before, because you are in for a treat. You are going to hear the most inspiring and heart-affirming story from the legend of mobility, that is Sue Kukadia. So everybody, hit those buttons as we bring Sue onto stage. Sue, I don't know if you saw the love out there. I mean, LinkedIn is going mad. I think LinkedIn may well explode with hearts and applauses and like buttons.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, everyone.
it's just wonderful, wonderful to have you on the show and have you talking about your experience. Because as I was saying in the introduction, mobility is very, very different to someone who is physically disabled, and we use that term fairly flippantly in mobility to mean overseas travel or domestic relocation, etc. But obviously, you know, for you and for many others, it's got a completely different meaning. So you were born, Sue, with spina bifida. So just tell us a bit about what spina bifida is. Let's get the background here.
Thank you, Brian. So spina bifida is essentially, it's an orthopedic bone disorder, a neurological disorder, and it impacts you in different ways. So it depends where your spine is, and you will be born with a hole in your spine. And depending on where that hole is in your spine, it will determine how severe your disability is. So in my case, the hole was quite further down below my back, which has basically impacted my mobility from sort of my hip and my legs. And then together with spina bifida, I'm going to show my age now, back in the 70s, they used to couple it with hydrocephalus, which is essentially water on the brain. So many people that have spina bifida will also have hydrocephalus, which is a tube that goes into your head, that goes around the back and then into your lungs and sort of helps pump water around. Now, I don't have hydrocephalus, but I do have the hydrocephalus pump because it was assumed that when I was born, I would have both.
Okay, and was this something that was predicted? Did they know? Was this something that was diagnosed? And if so, you know, how late after birth was it diagnosed?
So I was born in the 70s, and at that time it wasn't known what spina bifida really was. After lots of research and studies, now it's known that folic acid is a massive contributor. So lack of folic acid would cause somebody to have spina bifida. So when I was born, my legs were literally wrapped around my hips. All my bones were quite stiff. You couldn't really see my legs because they were literally wrapped around my body. And I had several operations to remove, you know, one of my legs from my hips, and then my ankle, and then my knee, and then my toes. And I think they worked out within about 2 weeks that I did have spina bifida, and I needed surgery on my spine to almost close that hole. So I had surgery for my spina bifida when I was 6 weeks old.
6 weeks old, okay. And since then, how many operations have you had in your life?
If you count the most recent one, then 149 orthopedic operations.
Wow. Okay. So if you're out there, by the way, in the audience, and you've got questions or comments, please feed them into the comments box as we listen to Sue's amazing story. So you're one short of your 150th operation.
I'm hoping for a plaque or something.
Yeah, you should get a medal or something. And when you were born, how long did you stay in hospital for? So
I lived at Wrexham Park Hospital in Slough for 15 years, and I didn't walk at all. So during that time, I was on calipers, which are sort of, you know, metal supports for your hips all the way down to both of your legs. And I had pretty much one surgery after the other. I started to stand with calipers and crutches when I was around 15, and then started to walk with crutches around sort of 16, 17. So I practically lived there. I used to be able to go home in between surgeries to see my family, but essentially that was my base.
Right. So you make sure I just get this right and put this out there. So you were basically in hospital for the first 15 years.
Yeah.
15 years of your life.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And yet here you are as like head of immigration at Mazars, a partner in a leading. What about education? I mean, you know, I appreciate that might have been the last thing on your mind when you're sort of worried about operations, and obviously you were, you know, very young and coming to terms with it. But what was schooling like? How did you get educated?
Well, I mean, I was very fortunate because my dad, when he came over from Kenya, he came over to the UK, he learned to speak English, and he was adapting to UK life. And he could see that a child with a disability is going to need a lot more support. So we tried lots. We tried a variation. We had tutors at home. We had private schooling. I had a lot of schooling in hospital actually as well. So I sat some exams whilst I was in hospital. And then once I left hospital, I went into a special school, which is a special needs school, and then also integrated into a mainstream school. So during the sort of the life, there's been lots of different people that have played a big part in the education.
So you basically had tutors that came into hospital to help you.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, just comment, I could put up a comment here from Trish McDonald. Amazing story, Sue. I can't imagine how this has impacted your mental health. You seem very positive despite your challenges. I mean, that's such a great point. You are such a cheery, positive person, but you must have had the darkest of days.
I think you do. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've had a lot of support. I've got a great family. I've got, a massive family network. I'm Asian, so everyone's family pretty much. And I've got a lot of friends, and I've been very fortunate that they've played a huge part. I think if you've known no different, it's difficult to say that, when I hear people say you're very inspirational, it's really nice to hear. But
look at this from Menno. Let's just pull that one up again. You're the biggest woman I've ever met. Very proud of you, Sue Kukadia. I think everybody in the audience does. But yeah, so carry on. Sorry.
Yes, I think it's a case of not knowing any different. I mean, I do feel very, very sorry for my poor husband, because he'll say to me, "I've got a cold," and I'll look at him saying, "Well, I've had a hip replacement." I trump. So the poor guy can't be ill in my house. But I think it is.
Shout out him. What's your husband's name?
His name's Jay.
Shout out to Jay. Amazing family. Yeah.
So I think that's played a huge part in it. And I also think that sometimes you do it for other people more than yourself. And I certainly went through a phase where saying no or not, I do say it quite a lot actually, more recently where I've had surgery, where I say I'm tired, but then I know I'm not always doing it for myself. I know that I'm also letting people down around me that have an expectation to say, come on, Sue, that's not really your personality, or you're not really going to give up, are you? And I to the point of people are making around the positivity, it is what it is. I can be quite down and miserable about it, or I can just get on with my life and smile about it. Either way, it doesn't really change my situation. So I've kind of decided that, I'll go down the positive route.
Amazing. You are inspiration, because you had surgery just 3 weeks ago, didn't you?
I do. I'm rocking a cast at the moment. So yes, I did. I had further surgery to my foot and ankle.
Right. So I mean, I'm just going to pull up some of these comments before. From Sandra here, it causes me to think of family support and encouragement in ensuring that you still had a vision and a hope for your future. One of my sisters is a physical therapist specialized in pediatrics and has a lot of spina bifida patients, and family support and expectations make such a huge difference. I mean, how important is your family to you?
Oh, they're my world. I don't think I could do any of what I do without them. Just going back the 3 weeks, I've had my husband, obviously, he's there 24 hours a day. He does everything from, helping me wash, helping me dress, making my dinner, doing the washing, the clean. He does absolutely everything, coupled with the fact that my sister and my brother don't live too far away either. So they're in and out helping, hospital appointments, whatever I need. I've got my nieces and my nephews coming over to say, right, we're doing the physio with you today. We're going to help you walk. So it is hugely important to me. And when I talk about my family, I just don't talk about my personal family. I also talk about the Mazars family here as well, because they've been so helpful, so supportive. And to someone's point, yes, I do have good days and I do have bad days. But when I do have that bad day, I don't feel like I can't pick up the phone to say I'm taking some time out for myself today because I'm just not feeling great. And I get all that support, not just from my team, but from all the partners alike. So, really, really privileged in that sense.
Just amazing. I'll pull up a comment here from Chastity. She says, my daughter has spina bifida as well. I'm so grateful for your story. It gives me confirmation that she will still have a great quality of life. Because actually what I want to come on to, Sue, and what is so amazing about you, apart from anything else, is, you know, you've had this, you know, really, really challenging childhood and early years, but you've achieved so much, you know. So, you know, you went through your schooling, you got yourself to university, and somehow you got yourself into mobility and immigration. So tell us about that. How did you cope when you went to university? So at that point, you'd left, you left hospital, you'd left, you know, and you'd gone to university. How did you cope then? And how did you cope getting into, you know, all your professional studying and professional exams?
I broke my parents' hearts actually when I went to university, and I told them that I wanted to live out, especially my mom, because I think she had spent so much time away from me. Having me home was just the best thing. She wanted to just put her arms around me and never let me go. But not having been at home for so many years and being in and out of hospital, being around different cultures and different experiences, I decided I did want to go to university. I think one of the things you have to remember with anybody that has a disability is that they spend pretty much 90% of their life trying to be normal, in inverted commas, as much as they can. You do get that spectrum of people who won't want to work, or who have family that sort of almost mollycoddle them, or, you know, put them in a little, you know, in a little box to say, actually, we're here to look after you and you will always be looked after and you don't need to work and you don't need to do these things. I had the opposite, where my dad was very much like, you're in a country where perhaps you can, you know, pay people to look after you. So you are going to have to study, you are going to have a nest, and you do have to be self-sufficient, because you can't rely on your brother or your sister, because they'll get married and have their own families. So I got into university, and so my right leg is completely straight. It doesn't bend at all. So it means I need help with daily things like putting my shoes on. If I'm wearing trousers, I need somebody to help me on with those. And I didn't really think about that. That was a little bit of an afterthought, which gives you some insight into my personality. I decided that I'd got myself into a law and business degree, and that was what I was going to do. I then went into university, and that's when the research started, and I aligned myself with the student liaison team and realized that I could get the support. And I think the biggest thing which people don't know about me is that I don't find it very easy to speak about my disability. I used to see it as a very negative thing, and I've had to work hard to turn it into something positive that I can do. And it's not being positive about me, but it's being able to support others with disabilities to get to where they want to get to. So
I'm not going to hear anything negative about you. You're the person I've ever met.
And I think the biggest thing was to ask for help and not be afraid of asking for help. And I think that is it was such a big thing to me, because I was so scared of the rejection, for somebody saying no. And that sort of carried on into my work life as well. So as I started my career, and I know Julia was on here earlier, but she'll tell you that I don't think anybody who does immigration actually goes into a profession, into immigration. I think you almost fall into immigration, which is what happened to me. But it's a very satisfying area of law, because you are making a difference to people's lives. And I didn't always tell people that I was disabled. So if I went for an interview, I didn't always tick the box that said you've got a disability. I almost left it blank, because I thought it would be seen as quite negative. I was one of these people that was thinking I could talk myself out of pretty much any situation. So if I got myself into the interview, then if it came up, I would talk about it. But I've kind of...
It's a lot harder in those days, because these days, you know, you're sitting here, you know, on a Zoom or a Meets or a Team or something, and nobody will know whether you're disabled or not. Whereas when you went into the office in the old days, obviously it was, you know, immediately obvious to everybody that you had a disability.
Oh yeah, and you know, I mean, people are a lot more careful about how they phrase things now as well, because they don't want to come across sort of it's too negative when they talk about disability. But in those days, people would just say, "What's wrong with you?" And "Are you sure you can do the job?" And "Well, will you manage?" And questions were things like, "Well, how many days off sick have you had in the last 12 months?" Or, you know, was obviously going to fail that one from the start. So I think you're right. Things have massively evolved, but I think it is about taking a step back. For me, it was taking a step back and not letting the disability control me. I decided that I was going to focus on what I can do and making sure that I've got everything around me that will, or the right team around me, the right people around me to support me to get to where I need to get to.
Okay. What is your mobility like at the moment? I mean, obviously the audience can only sort of see half of you. So what do you, I mean, are you able to walk these days? Or are you mainly wheelchair bound, or how does it sort of go?
So I've over the last 4 years, I've had quite a lot of surgery. I've had 2 hip replacements. I've had my leg realigned. I've had lots of foot and ankle surgery. So I'm supposed to be using a wheelchair more. I'm hobbling around on crutches. I do get very frustrated, but and prior to that, I was limping. I mean, I always had crutches if I needed them, but those people that do know me will know that, if I don't have to use something, I won't. So I start rehabilitation in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm hoping that I can wean myself off the crutches at that point. And I think I will always walk, because I have one leg that's shorter than the other. I do walk with a limp. So I've got slightly less of a limp now with all the surgery, but yeah, I have the wheelchair. I have a very swanky wheelchair actually that we just bought, and I have crutches.
Okay, so actually, I'll just pull up a couple of other comments here from Marcus. He said, "I've only ever had job offers where I've concealed disability. Sadly, it has resulted in a somewhat patchy career." So basically, he's saying, I suppose, is that where he's shown he's got a disability, he hasn't had the job offers. Where you had a very different experience, didn't you? I remember you posting a while ago about Mazars and your job interview experience there. Can you tell the audience about how wonderful Mazars were when you went through?
I had an interview.
Mazars, yeah.
I had my interview at Mazars, and it was pre-COVID. So I went into Tower Bridge House, which is where we used to be, and I was on crutches because I'd literally just had a hip replacement, and there was a bit of a sort of question mark as to whether or not I should even go in, but I did. And I remember walking into these offices, and it was like an airport, where you are from the door right the way to check-in. It just felt like miles. And there was a young man, and he held the door open for me. And I thought to myself, either I look very pathetic on crutches and look like I need help, or this is a very nice place to work. And he actually held the door open. I went in, I had my interview. I was senior tax partner, a member of the exec and the leadership. And I remember sitting and they'd asked me everything about my career. And I obviously walked in fumbling around with crutches and bags and all sorts, but nobody asked me about my disability. And I remember as I was leaving saying, just one thing, I have a disability. Does anybody want to ask me anything about it? And what they said was, no, do you want to tell us anything? Is there anything you want to tell us? And I was like, I do have a few issues around mobility. And they were like, that's fine. But it was nice that it wasn't about the disability, or that we didn't have a massive discussion about it. It was a case of, if there's anything that you need, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. And that's pretty much all you want to hear. Because then as you go along and you get to know people, and you can work out what you can and can't do. But for me, it was just one of the best experiences I had.
Well, okay. And I'll just pull this comment up here from Leah. What a beautiful representation of what grace and gratitude looks like. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I mean, everybody loves you. So, but let's go back onto your career, and I want to start moving it a bit into sort of, what we can all do and what the world is like. I mean, do you find sometimes that people are, what's the right word, overprotective, that people will sort of, you'll have a client meeting that you really want to do, and they'll be thinking, well, actually, maybe Sue shouldn't be doing it because it's a bit difficult to get to, and they're sort of making decisions on your behalf? Or, I think
early on in my career, it did happen quite a bit. It was seen as a bit of a hassle. If we can send somebody who's able-bodied, who can jump on a plane, get to the client meeting, come back and fly back in 2 days, why wouldn't we? As opposed to, I know one of my old colleagues is on here. I saw her, Amy Baker. She's at EY. Amy and I travelled quite frequently together, actually, and she's somebody who recognises that I needed quite a lot of help. But we when we traveled together, it was more a case of you owning it, actually, to say, okay, I can do this. And yes, I need to plan a little bit extra. And yes, I need to put a few more things in place. But once you have a disability, and if you start accepting it yourself and you know what you can do with it, then you get better at it. But you can't always change people's behaviors. And I will always come across people who see the disability as a negative. They'll see the disability before they see me. And that unfortunately goes with the territory. But I think it's also about educating people as you go along. And I don't take it as a negative. If somebody says to me, oh, so it'll be easier if somebody else goes, I'm more likely to be that person to say, okay, can you explain why?
Okay, so what's it like then? I mean, let's say you've got a client meeting and you're based in London. Let's say you've got a client in, let's keep it domestic actually. Let's say you've got a client in Birmingham, or even just the other side of London, and you've got a meeting there. What planning do you have to do?
So first and foremost, it's how I'm going to get there. Where are they based? So do they have parking on site? Because I drive a car, my car has hand controls. It's the easiest way for me to get around. So do they have parking? If it's London, that's usually a big fat no. Or it's a public car park, which means that then you've got to travel some sort of distance. Once you get past the transport piece, then it's how accessible is the client's offices. So sometimes you'll say to somebody, oh, is your office accessible? They said, yes, it's accessible, but there's one step. You need to get into the building. Then it's all flat. And you then start thinking, I wonder how big that step is. Is it a little step or is it a big step? And then it's then once you get into the office, it's if I'm in my wheelchair now, then is that office space accessible? And then, so by the time you've planned all of that and answered all the, you have a perception, well, wonder what the client's thinking about that. And, are they okay about it? So everything you do requires forward planning. I mean, for me right now, even taking a step from here to go to the bathroom or to the kitchen, I have to plan it out in my head. So you almost have to sort of compartmentalize the fact that there's a part of your brain that has to look at accessibility before you look at the job in hand.
Okay, so let's take it one step further. We talked about you having a business meeting in the other side of London or in Birmingham. Let's take it one step further. Your business meeting is in New York.
Yeah.
So talk us through international travel.
Oh my gosh. So the first of all, I mean, after you've booked, so I couldn't sit in an economy class chair because my right leg doesn't bend at all. So straight away, you're looking at whether it's going to be premium economy or business. So you've got to get your internal sign-offs. Or you've got to look at a policy. Does your company have a travel policy that covers disability? 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. Or then you look at the business travel policy, or you look at the relocation policy to see where in it does it say, because there's a fine line. As an employer, I can say it's a fine line as to being helpful and then making reasonable adjustments, or just discriminating completely and saying, actually, no, we'll rather send somebody who's more mobile. So it's about that. So if it's a flight, it's that. Then looking at, is there any airport assistance available? Some of the bigger airlines, they have it online and you can go in and book it. Other airlines don't. So you have to go into check-in and you have to ask, have you got wheelchair assistance? Can I get to the lounge? Is there a lounge I can go to? Where can I sit? I'm in the UK, there's quite a lot of help around. But if I go, then I have to think about going abroad. And on the other side, what help is available to me? I don't know those. I don't know what their processes are. I don't know what their wheelchair assistance policy is. Most people will come off a plane, jump on a train, get a taxi. I have to think about what kind of taxis do they have? Will they hold a wheelchair? Will they hold my luggage? Will they take me to the...
Yeah, I'm guessing most taxis that you just hop onto in an airport, sort of yellow cabs or whatever, black cabs or whatever they might be in your city, they tend not to be wheelchair accessible.
No. So my husband and I were in Abu Dhabi a few months back, and we came out of a shopping centre and we were trying to get a taxi, and they have some sort of gas cylinder thing at the back of their taxis, which means that the wheelchair would not get in. So we waited almost an hour before we could get a taxi that was large enough. And then once you've got, and then it's all about who's going to help you with your luggage. You can't, I'm not going to be able to take it off the carousel. And so often you have to pay for that. And that, you know, that who's paying for that? So I'm almost paying for the fact that I have a disability. I've got to pay extra for a taxi. I've got to pay extra for the help that I want. I've got to so those things are considerations. And then you go.
Just stop you there, actually, because what I'm going to say, we've got a lot of mobility professionals, obviously, in our audience today. And here's my challenge to all of you. Check your policy. What does your policy say? Because to take what Sue said, you know, your policy might say you fly economy, you fly coach on trips of less than so many hours or whatever it might be. Okay. Well, does it have an exception written into it for people who've got disabilities? Does it have an exception written into it in terms of cabs, in terms of, you know, the other things you mentioned? Because it shouldn't be the case that someone in Sue's position has to ask to be an exception. The policy should be written so that the exception is borne in mind, because the chances are that in your organization, you're going to have somebody that has got a physical disability. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Sue, but my guess is that most policies do not automatically have language in there aimed at people with physical disability. Is that your experience too?
It is. And so part of the role that I do at Mazars, where I'm doing the immigration and we review policies, I quite often do work with organisations to say, let me look at what that policy looks like and what you should have, you know, and it shouldn't be a bare minimum, but actually that's the angle you come at to say what is the absolute minimum you should have for somebody, because it's not just about going abroad and booking that hotel, making sure it's accessible, and, you know, making sure that the room has a walk-in shower and that sort of thing. It is beyond that. What if if I have an electric wheelchair, what if my electric wheelchair breaks down? Is there somebody, who do I go to get that support? What if my, you know, the rubber on my crutches, you know, snaps? Who do I go to? And does my travel insurance or my health insurance cover that? And these are things that I have to check before I go abroad, because quite often organisations will say, well, we've got, you know, we give you health cover, you've got travel cover, you've got it with your credit card, you've got it with the firm, but how far does that go? And those things do make you quite vulnerable when you're abroad. It can make anyone feel vulnerable, but when you've got a disability, you're almost even more vulnerable, I'd say.
Yeah, because you're going into a city where you don't, almost by definition, you don't know where you are. No. And again, I think, you know, most policies will typically say that you're entitled to whatever, a standard hotel room. But yes, what you're saying is that a standard hotel room is likely no good for you because you need a walk-in shower or, you know, other facilities, and they might be more. Do they tend to be more expensive rooms, or they're just harder to book?
They do tend to be more expensive rooms. If you go, they normally come up to sort of a higher standard or an executive, just because of the space. So the rooms are more spacious, so you can get a wheelchair out. Most of the showers have like a wet room, so you can go in and out. So they are, and also a lot of hotels will only have 1 or 2 rooms like that, if you're lucky. So if you went to a boutique hotel, potentially wouldn't even have a lift. And if you go to some of the the older hotels, like, you know, the listed buildings, the gorgeous hotels, I like to call them, you know, they're not accessible at all, are they? So you almost end up going to a hotel that's more of a chain that, you know, will probably have some sort of access.
Okay. So, I mean, we've talked about travel. The one bit we've missed, actually, is, of course, your area. We've missed out the immigration bit. So tell me a bit about, I mean, I'm guessing that when you go through security on the way out, you probably set off every alarm.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how much? A stupid question. How much metal have you got in your body?
I've got a metal hip, so I sort of, you know, that sends off music when I go through the border control. Also, I have metal in my knee now, and recently just had metal in my ankle. And again, I think, as I say, I think people have an image of what a disabled person looks like. So when I'm sitting in a chair, they will be like, well, can you get up? I'm like, not really. Or have you got metal? I'm like, yes. And so they do look at you a bit odd. And then when they get the little scanner out and they go around your body with it, you can see you're bleeping everywhere. And then I think you get frisked every time.
They're also checking, presumably, the crutch or the wheelchair itself.
Everything gets swabbed. Your shoes get swabbed, you know, the wheelchair does. You get frisked every time, you know, you get taken into a room and frisked every single time. So you build that into your kind of travel plans, you know, half an hour to go through security and an extra half an hour to get frisked.
And when you arrive the other side and you're actually getting into the country, do you find then that there's issues actually at the immigration gates themselves?
Depends on different countries, but most of the time, more recently, they want to see the type of, they may, so following COVID, they ask you for COVID insurance anyway, but now I'm seeing that they want to see all your insurance. What do you have? So I carry a letter from my consultant or my GP every time I travel, which is, current, dated in the last month, that basically says I am fit to travel. I have a list of all the medications that I need to take. They have to be labeled correctly. If they're not labeled in the right way and they look slightly dodgy, then, you're sitting in the narcotics department being looked at there. So it's not an easy process, but you build it into what you do. If you're carrying your passport, carry your insurance documents and carry other things that you need to show that you're okay whilst you're there.
And do you find sometimes that you'll get to a destination and maybe the person you're dealing with doesn't know what spina bifida is, and they don't understand it?
Oh yeah, the common question is, what's wrong with you? My default is there's nothing wrong with me. I have a disability, but it's a case of, yes, I have a disability and this is what it is. So yeah, I mean, as I say, you do get used to it. It's not very nice hearing every time I'm asked it. Yeah, I'm sure I pull some sort of face, but it is what it is.
Okay. Let's name names. What are the worst airports you've been in terms of giving you problems for getting through?
The US, actually.
Really?
Yes, actually.
Any particular airport? Let's name and shame an airport.
I think Seattle was actually quite quite awful one, and Houston wasn't great either.
Sorry?
To all the fellow US people out there, Houston wasn't brilliant, and I had an awful experience at Seattle. And I think in Seattle they actually phoned my consultant to verify. They phoned to verify my condition. They phoned the hospital to verify.
Okay, so there's quite a big time difference there. So, and also, I mean, it's a big time difference, and getting through to consultants at the best of times is difficult. Normally, you end up in sort of, voicemail prison.
I'm very fortunate. I've had the same consultant for a very long time, so I do have him on mobile and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually say to them, put a number on that they can actually contact you at, because they may do. And I think that, but then there's other ports I've got it so right. I mean, Canada borders have it so right.
Shout out to Canada. Okay.
Yeah, Canada have it so right. I've never had an issue going into Canada. I love it. And Singapore also has it completely right as well. So it surprised me that but the US does apply greater scrutiny to anyone, to be fair. So
okay, so I want to move the conversation on. Obviously you are incredibly inspirational, and that's been recognized in various awards. And I know you're up for an award at the moment. You're up for the National Diversity Awards, which is a pretty well-known UK award. But tell us a bit about that and how you got nominated and what the nomination means and the work you do.
So nominated by people I know, I believe. They don't ever tell you who actually nominates you. Historically, the National Diversity Awards, the subcategory for disability, has really been around people who have done quite a lot of work in charity or have done a lot of work for the community. And as much as I do that, and I have my own Facebook site, which is Ability and Disability, and I sit on the board of trustees for the Spina Bifida Association, this is an award that's been nominated. I've been nominated for because it's making change in the workplaess.
Here we go. We put it up here. Okay, so everybody, Sue Kukadia, let's get her over the line. Let's get you nominated for this award. Absolutely.
And so
when is it? When they announce it, we are going to big time this.
So this is an award mainly around making changes in the workplace and encouraging teams, people around you, workplace, to say, what are the small changes you can make to make somebody with a disability, whether it's visible or invisible, make their life slightly easier on a day-to-day basis. It's something small, like motorizing doors, so that somebody with a disability can get in and they're not struggling in a wheelchair or crutches or whatever trying to open up doors. It's having the elevator or the lift speak to you about what floor you're on, so that somebody who's maybe sight impaired doesn't need to worry about the fact they can't see what floor they're on. It's having braille, it's having signage. It's those small things that you can make that make such a huge difference to one's life.
Okay, so Marcus here has said, going to France for the first time with a power chair in a few weeks. Wish me luck. Well, we do wish you luck, but more than wish you luck. Okay, what tips can you give, Marcus? Plan
before you go ahead, Marcus. So recognize where airport are you traveling to, what traveling from. Don't be afraid to ring up the airline to ask them what kind of support is available. Make sure they know that you have a disability. Make them write it in the notes so they know when you check in, on the way there and on the way back. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you feel that you need that support, go to somebody in your uniform and ask them to say, I need help. They will help you.
Okay, we're nearly out of time. We've got a few minutes left. But Sue, just to sort of, we bring this to a close, what call to action, what can we all do to help in this area and to be more aware and more inclusive and more, and help people? So what are your tips? What's the call for action that we can all do?
I think you mentioned it earlier, Brian. Having a policy of some sort is key. I think talking to your employees, be it line managers, people managers, whoever it is, making sure you're talking to your teams and understanding if they need that kind of support. Planning is very, very important, especially if you're traveling. I can't put enough emphasis on it. And I'm not just talking about the actual traveling to and from the country, the hotel, but even making sure you know your client and having that, being upfront to the client to say, look, I actually do need some help. They can only say no, and then you might have to revisit it. But don't be afraid of asking the question. And I would also say, don't be afraid of the answer, because it may not always be what you want to hear. And that's okay too. And I think the final thing I would say is that don't let anyone on this call, don't let a disability stop you. There's no such thing as I can't. It might be I can't right now, or I can with a bit of support, but there's no such thing as I can't.
Wow. Okay. I'm just going to pull up a comment by Lisa Johnson, who is at Cartus, and I know known for many years as a passionate advocate for all things diversity. And she says this: our most recent DEI mobility survey at Cartus shows that only 11% of companies have added specific support for employees and family members with visible or invisible disabilities in their global mobility policies to ensure they're included. For those companies that have made changes, it's mostly on an ad hoc and exception basis. We need inclusions. Let's move our industry forward this year together. I mean, I just couldn't agree more. It's shocking, isn't it? It's shocking that only 11% have got anything. So if your company is one of the, 89% that doesn't have anything, then what should they do, Sue?
They should start thinking about it now. This is a time for change, isn't it? We're all talking about inclusion, diversity, and well-being. There's a lot of talent out there, even amongst the disabled community, if you like. We're living in a country where there's skill shortages all over in the UK, but all over the world. And these, everyone has different skills and different things they can offer. So get a policy in place and ask the questions, communicate.
Okay, and Sue, I know you're an immigration specialist. And that's your area. But if people want advice on what they could do with their policy to make it disability friendly, would it be okay for them to reach out to you?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Absolutely. And I know Jason's just put a comment up, and I love this. The UAE does not call they don't use the word disability. They use the word persons of determination.
Wow,
that's what everyone with a disability is called there, which I think is great.
It really is. Sadly, we're at the end of our hour. I'm just going to bring Julie and Julia back. And I'll bring Tally back as well. I mean, that has been the most amazing and inspirational conversation I think we've ever done on this show, and your positivity, Sue, just shines through. Just, it's been an honor to have you on the show. And everybody, I see the hearts are coming up. Let's get a lot of hearts, a lot of applause, a lot of love out there. And everybody, of course, please do vote for Sue Kukadia for the National Diversity Awards, and let's get her that award that she so well deserves. I'll just ping that comment from Tom Brune back onto stage, and we'll just end up with that. Tom says, without a doubt, this has been an inspiring, impactful as any webcast I've ever seen. Thank you to Sue Kukadia and Brian for sharing this story, which is a powerful testimony to the importance of DEI and A initiative in every professional endeavor, none more so than mobility. And let's all remember that mobility has got two meanings. And there's mobility that we talk about flippantly, and there is the real mobility challenge that Sue and people in Sue's situation all deal with every day. So that's it. That's the end of an hour. We are back next week to be talking about mobility and diversity with the wonderful Susie Chapman. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye.